Great. Okay. Yeah. Welcome everybody to the third, I think, Future of Coding slash Fear of Clicking slash Feelings of Computering slash whatever it's called now meetup. We've got three demos today, one from Achille, one from Kartik, and one from Cole. I guess that's the order we'll go in. So first off, Achille, you're going to be showing us Smallweb.
Yep.
So whenever you're ready, take it away.
Okay, let's go. Let me share my whole screen. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's start with like a global presentation of Smallweb. So basically, the tagline for Smallweb is your internet folder. And what I mean by that is that it works a bit like Google Drive or Dropbox. It's a folder you sync between all of your devices, basically. But compared to those services, there is one unique feature, which is that you associate a domain to your folder. And so once you associate the domain, every subfolder inside of this root folder becomes a subdomain. So you edit this file locally. So as if there were a local folder on your drive, but when you shut down your computer, your website keeps running. So just to explain a bit the maturity of the project, I've been working on this basically full time for almost a year, and the community has been steadily growing. It's becoming stable enough, and we are nearing the beta version. And yeah, so I don't have any more slides. Actually, I think it's time now to just show you the thing, and yeah, let's play with it. So just to show you my setup, I have like this Smallweb folder inside on my desktop, and as you can see, there is like multiple instance of Smallweb I'm managing from it. And here I created one for this demo, which is foc.smallweb.live. And so if you go, you can go ahead and open it inside of your own browser, foc.smallweb.live. You can see that there is like a quick markdown document. So I will ask you to not edit the demo currently. After this presentation, feel free to play with it, but not right now, please. And yeah, so I actually have it open inside of VS Code. It's just a local folder. And if we look at what this website maps to, basically when I open foc.smallweb.live, there is a convention. It maps to the www folder. And so here, it's a Markdown document, and Smallweb is smart enough to just like render the Markdown document to HTML. But yeah, I think like it also works for static website and stuff like that. But in order to actually show you the fun stuff, we are going to switch and go directly interact with dynamic websites. So let's go see the simplest of them. So the convention is super simple. You export by default a JavaScript object, which has two methods, one fetch method and optionally one run method. And so here the folder is example. So if I go to, or I can just use the Smallweb CLI, Smallweb open example. Here I have basically like the response which is returned to me. And so this is already useful because like you can use it to automate a bunch of stuff. One example I created for myself is a little shortcut. So if I go to slide.foc.smallweb.live, I get to my slides, the Excel slide I showed you before. But when it becomes really interesting when you couple this with URL import. So Smallweb is using Deno as its runtime, and Deno support URL import. And so here, for example, I'm importing a package from GSR. So GSR is basically like an alternative to NPM. And in there, I just import Excalibro, actually, the Excalibro application. I create a new instance of Excalibro, and I export it. And if we look at the code of Excalibro, we can see that like this class has a fetch method. So it's actually a valid Smallweb app. And so here, if I just go to excalibro dot live, I have the Excalibro app actually running. So by creating a single folder, putting a single file inside of it, and 3 lines of code, I have like a full-blown application. I did not have to mess with like my DNS, I don't know, like port and stuff, ugly stuff like this. And when I just do stuff here, it actually files on my local disk, and I'm able to actually reference like the SVG file I just created. Go ahead, you can go to this website and put a message in there if you want. And there is something I need to say. It's that Deno has sandboxing capabilities. So every website only have read access to its own folder and write access to its own data folder. You can use this write access for multiple stuff, for example, an SQLite database or stuff like that. Then, for some specific website, you might want to actually access your whole small web folder, you know. And so for this, you can create admin application. So here, it's inside of the config that you do this. So here I've set up VS Code as an admin application, meaning that if I go to vscode.foc.smallweb.live, I have actually an instance of VS Code, and I can edit stuff from here. So, and you can actually all edit stuff from here. So, for example, you can just, I don't know, take this Excalibro folder, copy it, rename it pom.ter, and here, what happened? I'm not sure what the error is, but pom.ter, here I have an exact copy of the file. And you can even like just if I go back here, I have all of my instance. So if I take the pom.ter thing and I put it, I just drag and drop it inside of smallweb.run. I can just go to pom.ter.smallweb.run, and I have basically like moved my website between hosts. So I'm not sure like how many time I have left, if any.
That was almost perfectly 7.5 minutes. So we still have another 7.5 minutes of audience question time, or if there's no questions, you can show a couple other things.
Okay.
Is the vision that this would be the hub for local first applications in a future where local first becomes kind of the predominant approach?
So I think there are like some stuff to build around local first in Smallweb, because like Smallweb support WebSockets and stuff like that. But here it's really server first, you know, like it's each of these apps is basically a little server. I don't know if you're familiar with, for example, Cloudflare Workers or Valton or Netlify Function or AWS Lambda. It's in this family of application actually. But like it supports most local first software libraries, I mean.
Can you speak more about your choice of Dino?
Yeah, so basically, what I like the most about Dino is like the convention around it, the fact that you can just like create a single file and have a valid application. You know, there is no you don't need like a generator of like Vite or something like that in order to get started working on something. You can just like create a folder, create a single file, and you're gone. You're done. And Smallweb like leverage Deno like quite a bit, because basically all Smallweb apps are valid Deno apps, so you can just extract stuff from Smallweb and run them on their own server if you want to scale more. Like it's more of a playground, you know, like something like that, where you just put a bunch of websites on a single VPS, and yeah, you play with it. You can share it with the communities, and yeah. So Kartik, you have a question?
Yeah, My question is, what does it take to get to the starting point of your demo where you had the folder and now it's publishing to the web? Like in terms of what software does it take? Like what do people have to install? And what do people have to know? Like, is this for programmers or can anyone use it? Can my mother use it?
So I was hoping for this question. Like I did not want to go too far into the architecture during my 7 minutes, but I was hoping for like a technical question. So basically, if you don't want to mess at all with any VPS, buying a domain and stuff like that, I'm working like on a cloud version of Smallweb where you basically just need to register on a website and run a single SSH command, and you have access to, like, you will be able to sync your folder locally. So the sync is not my own. I'm using a tool which is called Mutagen that I really that you should all check out. It's like one of the most magical tool on the internet. So basically what it does is kind of like SSHFS or mounting a remote drive, but instead of like mapping a network drive, it just like bidirectionally sync the two through an SSH tunnel. So each time something changes on there, it's replicated on there, and same thing on the other end. And if you want to self-host it, so it requires a bit more work, but Smallweb is just distributed as a single Golang binary. So it's super easy you can even run it completely locally. So for example, like, like this demo here, I can just run Smallweb up and override the domain, say smallweb.localhost, and here Smallweb is running locally. And if I go to, for example, excalibro.smallweb.localhost, here it's working. So here it's completely local on this. You can see like the requests are just coming in. Any other question, or is there any time left for a last one?
Yeah, there's 3 more minutes left. So Kartik, you've had your hand raised for a while. Did you have a question?
I should lower my hand. I already asked my question.
Sorry, I'm off in Zoom admin land.
How about security? Does this run on your machine, or is it synced to the cloud with Mutagen?
Yeah, I understand your confusion, because like Smallweb is kind of blurring the line between what is local and what is remote. But here, by default, unless I just run a server here, absolutely nothing is running on my machine. Basically, just the whole state is in the Smallweb folder, and like the Smallweb folder is just synced to my machine, so I'm editing this file. But each time I do an edit, it's like mirrored on my server, and then there is like a watch process which is restarting the website as there are edits. But basically everything is running on my server. There is like no access to my machine for this website. And on a sandboxing matter, like it's running inside of a Docker container, a single one, and then each so it's first layer of sandboxing, and then each service, each app is sandboxed using Deno. So Deno allows to like put like a super granular permission on what you have access to and what you don't have access to. Maybe like to finish up, I can show you like some integrations that I'm quite proud of. So for example, there is like a recast extension, which allow you to list all of your website from all of your Smallweb folders and do a bunch of stuff with them. And there is also a VS Code extension. So for example, here, if I'm working on this Excalibur app, I can just do open current app in simple browser, for example. And here I have like this kind of like neat experience where I have the code on the left and the result of my work on the right. And then you can easily like just send the link to a coworker or a friend or something. And yeah, you don't have like a deploy step anymore using Smallweb.
Just one quick question from me. Do you have any thoughts about how the actual experience of authoring the content of the page might be changed as a result of you changing the circumstances around how the page gets deployed? Like, is there anything you're thinking about for, oh, the way we build pages using HTML and CSS and JavaScript and that sort of thing could be made different because of this different form?
I don't have a strong vision on this specific prompt, but I have one on like how we distribute and version applications. So I will just talk a bit about it. So in Smallweb, like for example, this VS Code application, here it's like I'm referencing it and I can just upgrade or downgrade the version, like using imports, which is like I think quite neat. And if we look at like what is actually what my dev workflow for the VS Code app is looking like, I can just open the VS Code dev workspace, and here we have the source of like my the VS Code application that I'm referencing on the other end. But this is also a Smallweb application, because it has a main.ts file, and so when I want to publish a new version, I just publish a new version to GSR. So my dev environment is always synced with like the latest version of the file. And when I'm satisfied, when I have something stable, I just push a minor or major release and I update stuff on the prod version. So instead of going through like the usual CI/CD step, there is like something which is closer to CLI application where you just like version stuff and use your package manager to distribute application.
Very cool. Achille, thank you so much for demoing Smallweb. This is a very interesting new way of building websites, and I'm excited to see that there's so many people here who are enthusiastic about working with it. And I can't wait to see how this grows and evolves.
I'll share the slide on the chat, and you have a list of links in there if you want to check out the repo or join the Discord, follow me on Blue Sky. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Kartik, do you want to go next?
Yep. Let me share my screen. Okay, so you'll see this now.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, so let me. Okay, so I'll spend a little longer than usual on the questions you asked, Ivan, about motivation and audience. There's a little bit of backstory, and I want to cover that. So I'll start with this little thing. This is Lua Carousel. It's a little little app that I built, and I put it on itch.io, and so anyone can download it. And it's been around for a couple of years now. I built it in a couple of months, and I've been sort of just very slowly tweaking it, but trying to make as few changes to it as possible. It's very easy to download. So what you do is you first go to install a game engine called Love2D. And so I'm going to do that now. So I'll save it. And so it's shown up here. Let me make that executable. So that's always like a scary thing. But this thing is really reputable. It's been around for 20 years, and it's open source and all that good stuff. So then I'm going to go down and I'm going to download my thing. It's 100 kilobytes. That thing is 5 megabytes. So pretty small stuff. Again, this is open source, easy to edit yourself, that kind of thing. And what this gets you by downloading two reputable, open source, trustworthy things is the use case I'm targeting is, oh, I suddenly decided I wanted a voice recorder on my phone, or I wanted a timer of some sort, some special thing, a chess clock. Normally what we do is we go to the App Store and we try to figure out which of these options is going to steal less of our data. And here everything is open source. And there's a bunch of blog posts here where in the sort of classic microcomputer style, you can copy and paste like 20 or 50 lines of code and paste it into this thing. Well, let me run it. Well, I have not run it yet. And so this is what it looks like. Oops, sorry. So you can edit it and you can run it, and it runs. And it's called Carousel because you've got these buttons on the left and right, and you can bounce around between multiple scripts. So here's a little thing I made like just last weekend, just to give you a flavor for it. My kids are learning mean, median. Well, they're learning the mean. And one of them said, well, so if a majority of people have 5 things, is the mean 5? And I said, well, there's a difference between majority and mean. And so here, if you change what people have, the mean sort of changes by about an equal amount for each person. Whereas the majority is very stable and then suddenly shifts dramatically. So that was a little thing that I built. Anyway, moving right along. How much time do I have? Okay, so that sort of set the stage for the audience that I started out with. Now in this demo, I want to just talk about a little more specialized thing. Let me just bring it back up for a minute. This thing runs on your phone. It runs on your computer. It runs everywhere. It's for small scripts, but it's amazing how much you can accomplish with just a few lines of code. It's amazing how much of code that runs on our computers is just there for surveillance and for data exfiltration. That's kind of how I'm going to put it. However, there is a limit here. The problem is each of these scripts, each of these screens, by the time you get to about 150 lines of code on a small screen on your phone, this scroll bar is so small that you can't acquire it with your finger anymore. So that sort of sets a limit. And so I've been trying to research, well, what can I do to make things a little bit, give myself a little more headroom. So let me show you another app. This one I'll show you really quickly. This is a Sokoban client. And you can move around and the usual stuff, but let me just quickly go into the editing environment. When you click edit, you get Carousel again. But this is a slightly different Carousel where all the files that you load, they come together to form a single app. And so you can, again, modify the source code right on your phone. But again, it's a larger app, but I split it up into files. Now, the problem with this approach is I'm sort of recapitulating all the old problems of our IDEs, which is, oh, here's a function being called. Where is it? Which file is it in? That's a problem. And it's kind of janky. So I have this janky like UI thing that I built in a couple of months, and I've inherited all the problems that like all our sophisticated IDEs still have. So I've been dissatisfied by that. So the thing I tried next was a different way to browse the source code. So this app is a little chessboard app. You can set the start time, you can set the increment, and then you click start game. And then you can start playing moves and you get a little chess clock. So my kids enjoy this. Again, this is a large app because to have all the rules of chess, I need like 500 lines of code. Now here, to break up those 500 lines, I tried a slightly different approach where I get a little graphical screen first up, and it shows me that there's a timer page and there's a main page, and you can transition between them. You can't transition back. And they only share these 2 variables. And if I click on the timer page, again, I'm faced with the Carousel UI, but now it's sort of broken up into 120 lines. It's sort of within, you can see how small that scroll bar is already, but it's barely there. And if I go back to the main page, now the rules of chess are much larger, and I couldn't find a good way to decompose it and show arrows and things like that. So for now, all I have is a glossary. So you have a set of concepts. And so to play chess, to write a program about chess, you need to know something about squares, a position which has pieces in it. And if you go into square, again, you have a window, and you can see that there's a function to draw a square. There's a function that says, okay, I'm the square. What's the opposite color? Square. And if I go to the position, then you can see the pieces that sit on top of each square. So to do this, I have to build a little hypertext browser. The hypertext browser that's running this little thing is about 500 lines of code. So let me show you that. I call it Lua-ML because it's really just Lua syntax. It's 500 lines of code because I'm not doing any parsing at all. The browser itself is fairly rock solid at this point, but this little thing that I put together just for this demo, we might run into problems, so bear with me. So on the right, you have a hypertext browser, and it's got sort of some online help about Lua Carousel. So here are some functions that you can call in Lua for Carousel. How do you write programs with it? variables you can read, functions you can call, and you can bounce around. On the left, I have a little window just so we can see what the hypertext looks like. That's not legal. So what I have to say is something like type equals text. And it shows you hypertext. Now, this is just text. Let's make it hypertext. Let's make it a link. So I'll say target equals, and now it's a link. And I can click on it and go back to the page I started from. I can do the usual sorts of things. I can say color equals green, :7. It's got a strange syntax for color, and I'll explain why in a minute. You can create rows and columns, so you can easily create grid layouts. How much time do I have? Oh, I'm over time. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, you're in question time, but I have questions, but my questions are probably going to be answered by you continuing to demo. But one quick one is, you said you're not doing any
give everyone a chance
parsing
for a minute, for a second.
Is that right? You said you're not doing any parsing?
Right. I'm not writing any parser myself. So what's being parsed here is just Lua. So I'm just using Lua primitives to parse the code.
Okay, that makes sense.
So this is all legal Lua, or at least like it will be once I finish typing. And so I can put in something else here. Did I make a mistake? What did I do? Oh yeah, there's a quote missing here. And I can switch from rows to columns. What else can I do? I can do things like increase the font size. I can change the background color. Oh, and one last thing I wanted to show off. I don't know how quickly we can do this here, but I'm forgetting my own syntax. Okay, and is that not what do I do? I am forgetting my own syntax, so now I don't remember what this looks like. But anyway, so there's a way. One interesting thing here that I've been experimenting with is I specify background colors perfectly, and I leave some wiggle room in the foreground color. And if you adjust the background, the system will try to maintain contrast. So it tries to maintain accessibility. And that's another 200 lines of code. I wanted to demo that, but I don't remember how to do that right now.
So just to refresh and make sure I've got an understanding of the context here, you are, in the long term, in the big picture, working towards an environment where you can program apps on your phone, and the apps are end user modifiable. You can kind of pop the lid and go in there and edit the source code. And you're kind of bit by bit working through what are some of the conceptual and UI challenges that you run into when trying to do programming on a phone. So file management, simple rendering for layouts and that kind of thing. And you're doing it you're trying to do it in a way that hews close to Love 2D as a substrate, because Love 2D is like extremely portable. So you can run these apps on any platform, and they're editable on any platform, and you want interfaces that work across all of those platforms. Is that a kind of a fair assessment?
Absolutely. Just a couple of things to add. For me, the major thing that Love gives me is stability. It's the fact that there are no auto updates. And so I'm using some version that was published 2 years ago. And they might put out another version in a year or so. And I love the fact that the code is not changing out from under me, where that gives them more power to do, sketchy things to, random suppliers. There was one other thing I wanted to say. What was it? But yeah, what you said was great.
Cool. Any other questions from the audience?
Sure. I'm curious if this is in relation to other community projects like like community building projects like D3, which built this really extensive system of supporting libraries. In this case, the problem was in JavaScript, we didn't have any good tools at the time to do plotting. So you had to roll it from scratch. And what's happened is that now we have both monolithic plotting libraries and we have practitioners who use D3 and build it out of smaller elements. And I would credit this to the engagement with the community and the attention to building up that user base that observable. He's on Observable now. Mike Bostock was engaged in. So I guess as a question, it's what is your what is your positioning as somebody who says these APIs are worth learning because it's a common language, because there's this community in a situation where, much like the visualization community, the community here is very fragmented and has a lot of different technical silos. What's your vision for same paging people on, actually, this is a really good and appropriate way to write microscripts because it supports all of those values of freedom from surveillance, permacomputing, etc.
I don't know anything about community building. So I think here I would look to the community to teach me, by asking the questions, and I'll gradually learn from everyone else. I think my the bias that I come in with is I don't consider fragmentation to be a problem. So if we think about from first principles, why is fragmentation a problem? I think it's mostly because we just end up with a lot of code. And if you can limit the amount of code, if everybody is just being very, very ruthless about limiting the amount of code that they need to maintain just because it's easier on them, there's fewer people to trust, it's more reliable, things like that. When we fork off and we create incompatibility, if the amount of code that we're managing is small, going across those boundaries is also manageable. It's tractable. At least that's sort of my hand-wavy argument. I think we would have to test it out in real, for real, to really see if that's valid. But one way that I've been exercising it is I'm constantly forking myself. So I have something like 50 apps at this point that are all sort of sharing code. And I'm trying to learn what the pain is of managing so many forks. And so far, it's been manageable over the last couple of years.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks, Kartik.
Send me more questions like that.
That is exactly at our time limit. This is the first time we've ever had a demo that has ended right on the mark. So I'm going to pounce on this opportunity to be punctual. And yeah, I mean, I've seen you working on this project off and on for what feels like forever at this point, but forever in internet time. And I love that you're still going on it. And I can't wait to see where you take this next, because it's...
I just want to add one thing to what you said before. It's not just for the phone. So the whole point of supporting the phone is that it's cross-platform. You can work with it anywhere. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, this is great, because it's attacking a part of a problem space I care very much about, but have no interest in focusing on myself. So that's it's good to see that. Our last demo today is Cole Lawrence. Cole, there you are, yes. So whenever you're ready, feel free to kick it off.
So I'm working on this project called Liminal with Harry, who's in the call too. I wanted to cover how I thought of it in relation to future of coding, and then let Harry give a shot at showing how it works. So Liminal is a tool that works on the top level for allowing you to instrument and create agentic workflows in AI using more common control structures that you're already usually familiar with. But there's a lot of interesting parts about AI that makes it more conversational, that you create kind of an inherent state, and that the approach just seems very novel. And so that's why I wanted to share it, and I want to hand it over to Harry to share from his perspective too, as he's more of the lead maintainer of the project.
Well, first off, thank you so much for inviting me to come speak to this group. This seems like a really cool group of people and great presentation so far. And yeah, Liminal is a way for you to kind of blend the conversations that a language model might have with itself, even into ordinary function control flow. And I think this will make a little more sense if we look at some codes. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and hide this. And all right, so first things first, we'll bring in the liminal library. Oops, not importing. All right, I'm also going to turn off cursor tab for now. I think that might be a distraction. And when using liminal, you model a conversation as a generator function. So we'll go ahead and add an asterisk here. And what that does is now it allows us to use this keyword yield or yield star. And the things that we're going to yield are primarily messages. So we could yield a user message. We can also, of course, yield a system message. So here, maybe the message that I'll write will be, and I have a plan. Let's see, when an instruction is given or is given, don't ask any follow-up questions. Just reply to the best of your ability with the information you have. And then we'll say, keep it brief. One sentence responses are preferable. All right, so that's our kind of like system prompt for the agent. Next, we can go ahead and add a message from user. By the way, I see there are some chats. I'm not looking at the chat, so if there's anything important, please do interrupt just by speaking. And so we'll say decide on a subtopic for us to discuss in the domain of technological futurism. All right, so we see that we're starting to build up a conversation. We have this first message, the system message, and then we have the user message. And next, what we're going to want is the response from the model. So yield and L.dot assistant. And this is going to be of type string. And we could log this out, this response. So we'll go ahead and execute this by awaiting the run of G. There's one other thing that we need to do, which is we need to actually specify what model to use. We could use, within here, we have to pass something akin to an adapter. We could go ahead and bring in, for instance, a language model from the Vercel AI SDK. So we can use OpenAI maybe. And finally, we need to bring in the adapter for that kind of model. So here we'll say adapter, and then we'll say OpenAI, and maybe we'll use Aura Mini. And yeah, let's go ahead and run it. So this is demo.ts, and surely enough, it gives us a topic. Let's discuss the impact of artificial intelligence on job automation and the future workforce. Great. But this is kind of a simpler use case. And what we really want to do is we want to build up this as kind of a comprehensive conversation component. So maybe let's alter this a little bit. And instead of capturing the value immediately, we don't really care because there's an implicit message buffer, a list of messages that's underlying this function. And we know that it's going to be added there whenever we yield L assistant. So it's going to trigger the inference, and then it's going to append the inferred message to the list of messages that's underlying this. So now let's just say to it, great. Please teach me something about this topic. And maybe then we'll have the AI give another response. And if we run this now with a handler. We'll say if event dot type is message appended, then we'll go ahead and log it out. Now, just for the sake of being able to see very clearly, I'm going to go ahead and copy from what I wrote out before. This is just a little bit cleaner. So we'll go ahead and extract the message role and the message content, and then we'll log it out. So here, when we run this again, we can see the conversation as it's progressing. And this is great, but one thing to note is, like, we have all of JavaScript at our disposal here. So why don't we actually use some ordinary control flow constructs? So I'll say let I equal 0, and we'll start a while loop. Say as long as it's less than 3, then we'll do some stuff here and we'll increment that. By the way, how am I doing on time?
You got a little bit of time left, unless people have burning questions and they want to jump in. Now would be a great time to ask any questions, but if you want to keep going on the presentation, by all means, take a couple more minutes.
Okay. Are there any burning questions?
No,
Okay.
so far so good. Okay, cool. Yeah, keep going.
So within this while loop, we can continue yielding messages. But one thing that we may want to do, which is a common pattern, is to actually take the entire list of messages that exists in this outer scope, and we might want to like explore adding additional messages to it, getting additional language model inference from it, without actually impacting that list of messages. So we really want to branch, and you can do this with Liminal. So say reply equals, and we'll yield L dot, it's called a strand. And within here, we pass another generator function, and we can yield more messages. So yield user, please reply the last message on my behalf. And what's neat is, like, this has its own conversation scope. So when we yield this message here, it's not going to impact the message state outside of here. And we'll say yield L dot assistant, and the value that we return from here is going to be inferred inside of reply. We could also return, like 2, and then this is inferred as a number, but for now we'll just return what the assistant gives us. And now we can use that to yield this as a reply. So we're effectively having the language model respond to itself. So we create this strand with an isolated state and say, reply to your own message for me. And then finally, we add it to the parent conversation by yielding it as a user message. And then we'll go ahead and trigger another inference. So now if we go ahead and execute this, we're going to see that we have this whole back and forth that the language model is having with itself, and it's unfolding, and we can observe it as it's unfolding. We can also return values from it. So at the very end of this, if we want to say L dot user, please summarize the key points from our conversation, and then return that summary, so an assistant message, then we can just go ahead and capture that here. Result. This is, of course, or should be inferred. Anyways, let's execute this again, and we're going to see that the final set of messages. Okay, it's looping through, and here is the summary that it gives us at the very end. We discussed the impact of AI on job automation, highlighting the potential for job displacement and the creation of new opportunities, and blah, blah, blah. Point being, we have this conversation component. It's represented as a generator function. We could parameterize it. So we could say model is model, and then build model within yield model within there.
I'm going to jump in and ask a question here. I would love to hear some examples of ways that you've found this interface to AI useful for something authentic, as opposed to like a toy example. Like what sort of things have you experimented with this, and what have you done that might be interesting to think about?
Well, it's very early on, but I'm starting to think about some patterns. So, and maybe I'll go ahead and liminal strands. So I have this kind of library that I'm building up, and within here it has a couple patterns per se. So a debate. If I want to know for a given topic all of the best arguments for or against it, I might use this pattern. And what I could do would be within this strand definition, could return yield debate and then pass in the topic, maybe different profiles for the debaters. So within here,
I can
like,
also show something from Forthing.
oh yeah, that'd be awesome. So I'll stop sharing. And
This was one use case where I was using Liminal, even though crowded with a bunch of other production codey things. This is called the magic transformer. So essentially, it's I took it out because of a webhook, a web worker like permissions issue. But essentially, you can pass in some key, so it, and then the type, which is a runtime validated type, and then a description of what you want it to come up with, and a TypeScript description. So you actually tell it, hey, this is what you're going to produce. What it's going to do is it is basically a loop for generating a JavaScript function that will take in some unstructured text and try to create a transform function that then structures that text. And in this, we're doing like we have like a test. So you test it in a web worker. We spin up a web worker through a blob using the function body, which is like an eval, piece of JavaScript that was generated. And then we can say, wow, do it in a while loop for max generation attempts. If it's a success from testing in the web worker, then we say, okay, cool, I'm going to save that implementation of the transformation for later. And then I'm going to return the data that came out as that output type from my runtime type. If it didn't work, then I show the errors and I precede the assistant to say, oh, I see the problem. Let me try again. So it will immediately start doing generate a solution again, which is this loop for, from my experience, well, that's the first time. So these things are what make Liminal special, is that you have all these tools for like managing the conversation flow, but in the entirety, you're just building up that conversation. So last thing I'll mention on this is, because this is itself a generator, when you actually go to like append messages like here, it'll actually be appended after whatever came before. So it actually holds all of the data and all of like the conversation from before, or it's able to do that. It's commented out. So if you're generating a whole analysis, this is what it was for, is here's the analysis, and then we would have in our prompt like a special way to format it. Then we would pass it over to our generator function that would then give us the structure that we're expecting.
So if I understand this correctly, the utility here that's being offered by Liminal is that it is giving you a little bit of leverage over how to structure the interaction with the AI. And that lets you do something like, in this case, build it into a toolkit for agentic programming flows, where the AI is refining its own, or through sort of conversing with itself, you can give it a prompt for some code, and it will test that code and look at the result and then refine that prompt and then generate some new code, and it will sort of self-evaluate. And so what comes out the other end is like, okay, here is a verified working version of this code that was generated. And you didn't do that by using a sealed off, built just for this purpose tool like Cursor or Windsurf or something like that. You built that facility within your own code base. And so if you wanted to change how it works or do something different with it, you still have that capability.
There's that side, as well as I would categorize it kind of like a DSL, where it's almost like if you've been using agentic tools and like command line at the same time, and it's like, okay, everything that's happening in the command line, it's actually automatically context. So you can do this sort of sparring and setting up the whole message conversation in a really convenient way, as opposed to, oh, I have this array of messages, and then I append to the array every moment, and then it's a lot more pieces involved there.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that, Cole. That's exactly right. The message management is becoming somewhat of a problem for people, I think, especially as they want to branch out and kind of fan into pretty deep self-reflection on different ideas with LLMs. Cole has been pushing a lot of these code generation use cases, and I'd imagine that Liminal will be really useful for the creation of iterative refinement loops, where you're going to want to generate some code, type check it, feed those diagnostics back into the next generation, and creating these patterns for things like editing files or taking in those diagnostics and applying the fixes. Like, you can do these in a really fine-grained way with Liminal that you can't with these agent frameworks that are more like about describing the links between steps with like custom workflow DSLs than they are about actual coding. And so yeah, Liminal focuses a lot on the composition of these low-level primitives, but using generators is a huge boon. I'll place a link in the chat here. Anyways.
Cool. Kartik, you had a question, and then we should probably wrap after that.
Yeah, I had a sort of basic question. So Harry, when you were showing your demo at the start, the screen, I could see like 4 different concepts, and I just wanted to make sure I understood the differences between them. The concepts were model, system, user, and assistant. Could you just go over what the differences are between them?
Yeah, and well, there are different kinds of messages that are common across different language model providers. I suppose I should have covered this. There are system messages, which are kind of like these core unbreakable directives.
Oh, I see. This is basic to like all. Okay, yeah, I don't know much. Okay, go ahead.
And then model is just about specifying which model to use. So you should be able to switch to a different model mid-conversation, or potentially you want to execute multiple branches in parallel, each with a different model, and then have some kind of orchestrator model decide which of the responses is the better one. Yeah, there are a lot of these patterns that are so new because like language models are so new. We don't have very good tooling yet for interacting with it, but kind of the core breakthrough of Liminal is you reason about the progression of the conversation in the same place that you reason about ordinary code. It's just function control flow, and you yield messages, you yield inference, and so you get to reason about it as one instead of having these separate constructs for message lists and such.
A quick follow-up. What's the difference between a model and the assistant?
Assistant is the role of a message that's come from the model. It's a little bit confusing because you might also have the model respond to itself. And it's actually a user, but it's just a common distinction in any set of messages that you're sending along to a language model. In order to get an inference, you're typically going to have messages fall into these three buckets: system, user, assistant. It's just
So just to make sure we understand it, choosing the model is like, O4 Mini or Claude Sonnet 3.7, or which specific AI model are you going to have process this conversation, and then the actual messages that are comprising the conversation are tagged with like who's saying this, right? Is the user saying this? Is the assistant responding with it, or is it the system prompt that is sort of the foundation at the beginning of the conversation that the other things are evaluated in context of? Is that right?
Yes. And one thing to note is Liminal is really scoping down the functionality of any given model. There are these common bits of functionality. One of them that's really important and we didn't cover is structured output. Sometimes you don't want to get text back from the model. You actually want to get some structured data. And tool calling is another. So if you want to give the model the ability to mid-completion ask you to run some code for it and give it the result. And then we get into the future of like really sophisticated models that can do things like process visuals and produce visuals and maybe real time, so it can listen to a readable stream of sound bites. Like these are things that we probably don't want to get into with Liminal. Liminal should really be just about modeling the thoughts, like making it so that language models can speak with one another and challenge one another.
Cool, great. That's probably a good place to end it for today. Thanks to Achille, Kartik, Harry, and Cole for demoing their projects. Always lovely to see what people are working on. Oh, hello, Marius. I'm going to mute you, unless you had a question or something.
I was thinking this, that what I wanted to say.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'll mute them. Yeah, thanks everybody for coming, and we'll do another one of these next month. Roughly, last Wednesday of the month is the time we usually do it. So if you enjoyed seeing these experimental projects people are working on, come on back for the next one. And great to see everybody and see what everybody's up to.
Yeah, and if you want to demo yourself, then don't hesitate to contact us on Slack.
Right. Yep. Yeah. Cool.
Yep. Thank you.